Ridgeview was a small and quiet town placed between green hills and long empty roads. People moved here because they wanted peace. They wanted clean streets, neat lawns, and friendly neighbors who waved at each other every morning. Anyone visiting the town for the first time believed it was a perfect place. The houses looked similar, the gardens were well kept, and children rode bicycles without fear. Everything seemed safe from the outside. But people who lived in Ridgeview long enough knew that something strange existed behind this calm picture. A group called the Ridgeview Home Association Patrol acted like they were an important force. They moved through the streets in cars painted with shiny stripes. They wore dark blue shirts and metal badges that looked official from a distance. They held clipboards, small radios, and sometimes even walked with a serious expression as if they were guarding the entire town. They were not real officers, but they behaved like they had real authority. Some residents accepted them because they wanted to follow every rule. Others stayed silent because they did not want trouble. There were a few who felt uncomfortable, but chose not to ask questions. Myra and her husband Amir had recently moved to Ridgeview. They had come from a busy city where noise never stopped. They wanted a peaceful place to start a new chapter of their life. Myra worked at a small bakery owned by an old woman who loved making sweetbread. Amir worked from home as a designer and spent most of his time setting up his workspace beside a window that showed a clear view of their front yard at first. The couple enjoyed Ridgeview. Myra loved the fresh morning air when she walked to the bakery. Amir liked watching birds gather near the small tree beside their porch. The neighbors were polite but distant. People smiled, but their smiles seemed controlled. They were friendly, but always careful with their words. Myra noticed this on her first week. Amir noticed it on the first day. "Something feels tight here," Amir had said one evening as they sat outside drinking warm tea. "People watch everything, even when they pretend they are not watching." Myra had laughed softly and told him he was overthinking. She believed the town was simply organized. She believed the patrol existed only to keep the place neat. She thought her husband was stressed from the move and needed time to adjust. She noticed the patrol cars just like he did, but she assumed they were only for checking small town rules. She never felt fear before. She never felt unsafe. This changed slowly. One afternoon, as she walked to the bakery, she saw a patrol car stop a neighbor named Hannah. Hannah was walking her dog, a small brown puppy that barely reached her ankles. Two men from the patrol stepped out and spoke to her for several minutes. They looked at her notepad. They looked at her dog collar. They pointed at the length of the leash. Hannah kept nodding with nervous hands. Myra found it strange that a simple dog walk needed such strict checking. When Hannah saw Myra, her smile was polite but her eyes looked tired. Later, the same evening, Hannah passed by Myra's house again. She walked quickly, holding her puppy close. She greeted Myra, but her voice carried an uneasy tone. Another day, a young man who lived 2 streets away was asked by the patrol to explain why he parked slightly close to the sidewalk. The patrol car stopped near him. 2 people stepped out and began asking questions that sounded unnecessary. The young man answered politely, but he looked confused. When the patrol left, Myra saw him let out a long breath of relief. These moments made her think, but she still hoped it was nothing serious. Amir remained alert. Whenever Myra came home from the bakery late, he asked if anyone followed her or if she noticed anything unusual. She always told him she was fine. She always tried to reassure him. Still, a part of her mind wondered if the town was too controlled. One evening in early autumn, as the bakery closed early, Myra stepped outside with a small box of bread she wanted to take home. The sky carried a soft orange glow. The leaves moved gently in the cool breeze. The road ahead was empty. She felt peaceful at first. She enjoyed walking to her car with the scent of warm bread following her. She placed the box on the passenger seat and began driving toward home. The road was quiet, and her favorite song played softly from the radio. She kept her eyes forward and hands steady on the steering wheel. The calming moment lasted only a few minutes before she noticed a car behind her. It moved slowly at first. Then the blue lights on top began flashing. Myra looked into her mirror and felt her pulse rise. The logo on the side of the car did not belong to the police department. It belonged to the Ridgeview Home Association Patrol. She took a slow breath. She signaled and pulled to the side of the road. She reminded herself that she had done nothing wrong. She always drove carefully. She followed every rule. The patrol car rolled to a stop behind her. 2 men stepped out. Their shirts were clean, their badges shining under the orange sky. They did not smile. The first man walked to her window. He tapped gently with the back of his hand. His eyes did not look friendly or relaxed. He spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Evening, ma'am." Routine check. Myra nodded politely and kept both hands on the wheel. She noticed the second man walking around her car in slow steps. He looked at her tires, the back of her car, and then her trunk. He did not say a single word. "I understand," she said softly. "May I know the reason for this?" "Stop." The first man adjusted his badge and gave a short answer. "You seemed in a hurry. We just need to make sure everything is fine." Myra was not speeding. She knew that. She knew it very clearly. Something in her heart tightened. She remembered the story Hannah had told her about being checked for a leash that was too long. She remembered the nervous young man and his parked car. She remembered Amir's words and how he always felt something strange in the town. The man asked her to step out of the car. His tone was not harsh, but it carried an unspoken pressure. Myra opened the door and stood beside her car. The second man stood behind her, too close for comfort. She felt surrounded. She felt watched. She felt like this stop was not routine at all. Her jacket held a small emergency flashlight. Amir had bought it for her the first week they moved. He said she should always be prepared. She held it in her pocket without pulling it out. Its weight gave her a small sense of strength. The road was empty. The sky was becoming darker. The two men stood close with serious expressions. Mira understood that she was not simply being checked. Something had been planned. Something was unfolding. She lifted her chin slightly. She stayed calm. She observed every movement. She prepared herself for anything that might happen next. The moment felt heavier than any she had faced before. The quiet town she trusted was no longer quiet in her mind. The routine stop had turned into something else, something she could not ignore anymore, and this was only the beginning. Mira stood beside her car with calm steps, but inside she felt every breath sharpen. The air around her changed. The peaceful evening light no longer felt warm. It felt heavy, like something hidden was waiting to move forward. The two patrolmen did not look rushed, yet every action they made seemed planned. The first man wrote something on a small pad while the second man circled her again with slow but watchful eyes. Myra kept her posture steady. She wanted them to believe she was relaxed. She knew that fear could give people power over her, so she did not show it. The first man cleared his throat and spoke in a tone that sounded official. "Ma'am, we will need to check the inside of your vehicle. It is part of our inspection." Myra looked at her car and then back at the man. She kept her voice respectful. "I understand, but I would like to know the reason. I always follow the rules." The man gave a short smile, but it did not reach his eyes. His expression stayed cold. He tapped the metal badge on his shirt as if showing proof of authority. "The reason is simple. You looked like you were moving too fast. We need to ensure everything is safe." Myra knew this was not a real reason. She had been driving under the speed limit. She had no record of breaking any rule. She sensed that these men were not here to correct her driving. They were here for something else, something she did not yet understand. The second man stepped closer. He folded his arms and stood beside her like a silent shadow. Mira felt the pressure of his presence, but she kept her mind clear. She remembered how Amir always told her to stay aware of everything around her. She held her small flashlight in her jacket pocket. It was not meant to be used as a weapon. It was meant to be a safety tool with a bright strobe light that could signal distress. She hoped she would not need it. The first man walked to her passenger door and looked inside through the window. "What is in the box?" he asked without looking at her. "Some bread," she replied. "Left over from the bakery." The man nodded but did not step back. He looked around as if searching for something. Myra felt a small shiver inside her chest. She knew something was wrong when he opened the car door without waiting for her permission. She took one step forward, keeping her voice polite. "Please be careful with the box. It belongs to my workplace." The man gave another short smile. "Of course, ma'am. We are careful with everything." But Myra could see that his movements were not careful. He lifted the box, placed it down again, and then searched under the seat. The second man watched her without blinking. She felt surrounded by silent suspicion. After a few moments, the first man stepped back from her car. "We will need you to answer a few questions." "Standard process," he said. Myra nodded slowly. She did not want to create conflict. She wanted to keep the situation calm until she understood their intention. The first man took out a small device that looked like a scanner. He held it near her license plate and made a note. "Where were you heading?" he asked. "Home," Mira replied. "I finished work early today. Anyone with you at the bakery?" he asked. "Only the owner. She left before me." The man did not write this time. He only stared at her for a moment. The second man stepped a little closer. Standing almost shoulder to shoulder with Myra, she took a half step to the side, increasing the distance. The second man did not react, but Mira felt his eyes follow her movement. The first man continued. "Have you noticed anything strange in the neighborhood recently?" Myra raised her brows. "Slightly. Strange in what sense?" He shrugged. "On anything. Unusual visitors, an unusual activity, anything that looks out of place." Myra felt confused. She wondered why the Home Association patrol would ask her about unusual activities when they were the ones who seemed unusual themselves. She shook her head gently. "No, everything looks normal to me." The first man exchanged a brief look with the second man. Something unspoken passed between them. Myra sensed it clearly. They were not satisfied with her answers. After a long silence, the man spoke again. "We will need to check your trunk as well." Mira felt her hands curl slightly. She forced them to relax. She walked slowly to the back of her car and opened the trunk. Inside were simple things: a small bag from the grocery store, a folded blanket, a bottle of water. Everything was normal. The man checked each item, moving them around. Mira noticed he was not checking for safety. He was searching for something he expected to find. When he found nothing unusual, he stood up straight and closed the trunk. He looked at Myra as if waiting for a reaction. She did not give him any. She kept her voice calm. "May I go now?" He did not answer at once. He stepped aside and spoke to his partner in a low voice. Myra could not hear the words, but she saw their expressions change. It was small but noticeable. The second man glanced at her car again and then back at the first man. They both seemed frustrated. After a moment, the first man walked toward Myra again. "You may go," he said, "but we will be keeping an eye on this route." The words were simple, but the tone carried a warning. It was not a regular reminder. It was a message. Myra nodded politely and walked to the driver's seat. Her hands shook slightly as she held the wheel. She took a slow breath and started the engine. As she drove away, she saw the patrol car remain parked at the side of the road. Both men stood outside watching her leave. They did not move. They did not wave. They simply observed her until she turned around the next curve. Myra felt her heartbeat settle slowly. She tried to understand what had just happened. Were they looking for something specific? Did someone report something? Did they choose her randomly, or was it planned? She replayed every part of the stop in her mind. She remembered the silent tension between the two men. She remembered how they kept glancing at each other. She remembered the strange question about unusual activity. She drove home with careful attention to every mirror around her. She checked if anyone followed her. She checked if any car slowed down behind her. When she reached her street, she stopped for a moment before pulling into the driveway. The neighborhood looked peaceful as always. The houses were bright. The trees were quiet. Nothing looked out of place. When she stepped inside, Amir rushed from his workspace. "You came late." "I was worried," he said. Myra placed the bread box on the table and took a deep breath. "The patrol stopped me," she said. Amir froze. His eyes widened with concern. "Why, what did they want?" Myra shook her head. "I do not know, but it was not routine. Something felt wrong." Amir stepped closer. His voice was calm but firm. "From now on we need to be careful. Very careful." Myra nodded. She felt the same. Something in Ridgeview had changed. Or maybe it had been there all along and she had only now seen it clearly. The peaceful town was not as peaceful as it pretended to be, and this was only the start of a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. That night, Mira sat at the dining table while Amir paced slowly around the room. The warm light from the ceiling lamp touched only half his face, leaving the other half in fading shadow. He was thinking deeply. He always thought like this when something troubled him. Mira watched him with quiet eyes. She knew Amir well enough to understand that he would not rest until he made sense of what happened. "Tell me everything," he said finally. Every detail. Myra described the stop again from the beginning. She explained the flashing blue lights, the strange questions, and the way the second man stood too close. She told him how they searched her car without permission and how they whispered to each other before letting her go. Amir listened without interrupting. He folded his arms and leaned against the wall near the window when she finished. "This is not normal," he said in a steady voice. "They were not checking for safety. They were checking for something else." Myra nodded. She had felt the same during the entire stop. She looked toward the window. Their street was quiet as always. The soft glow of the street lamp made the road look harmless, but she no longer trusted that calm appearance. Amir sat beside her. "We need to understand what the Home Association Patrol actually does," he said. "Not just what they show to the public." The next morning, Myra woke early even though she barely slept. The bakery opened late on weekends, so she had extra time. After breakfast, she sat on the porch with her notebook, writing small details she remembered from the stop. She wrote the height of the men, the color of their shirts, the style of their badges, and the exact words they used. She wanted to record everything while it was still fresh. She noticed something as she wrote. The first man kept asking about unusual activity. The second man searched her car like he expected to find something hidden. These questions did not match a simple street check. Amir stepped outside with 2 cups of tea. He placed one beside her. "Maybe they stopped you because you are new here," he suggested. "Maybe they think newcomers are easy to question." Myra took a sip of tea and shook her head gently. "Don't. No, it felt like they were looking for something they believed I had. Something specific." Amir frowned. "But what? It makes no sense." Mira closed the notebook. Nothing in this town is making sense anymore. Later that afternoon, Mira went to the bakery. The owner, a kind older woman named Amina, noticed the tired look on Myra's face. She asked if everything was fine. Mira hesitated but then told her about the stop. Amina did not look surprised. She sighed softly. "This patrol group has been growing stronger each year," she said. "They check things that are not their business. They question people for reasons that are not real. Some residents think it is normal because they want order, but it is not real order. It is control." Mira's eyebrows rose. "You mean they have done this before?" Mina nodded. "Yes, they stopped a young woman. Last month, they asked her why she walks at night. They stopped an old man 2 weeks ago and checked his grocery bag. They always say routine check." Myra felt her heart tighten. She glanced out the bakery window. A patrol car moved slowly past the street as if listening to every word. Amina followed her gaze and lowered her voice. "Do not talk about this openly," she warned. "Just be careful." Mira worked quietly the rest of the day, but her mind stayed busy. The more she learned, the more she felt that her stop was not random. Something connected all these strange checks. something bigger than simple rules. When she returned home that evening, Amir was sitting at his desk with his laptop open and several notebooks spread across the table. "I found something," he said. When she walked in, Myra placed her bag down and sat beside him. "What is it?" Amir pointed to a map of the town on his screen. He had marked several locations with small circles. "These are the places where we saw the patrol stop people. These are the houses they checked. These are the streets they drive the most." Myra studied the map. At first glance, the stops looked random, but when she leaned closer, she noticed that all the marked spots formed a pattern. "They are checking areas close to the old Ridgeview storage building," she said quietly. "Exactly," Amir replied. "I think the storage building is the center of something. They keep circling it in wider and wider loops." Mira remembered passing that storage building many times. It looked abandoned, with no clear activity. Some said it was used for old tools. Others said it was empty because the town did not need it anymore. Mira never paid attention to it. "Why would they guard an empty building?" she asked. Amir shook his head. "Maybe it is not empty." Their eyes met. The same thought came to both of them. The patrol was searching for something, and Mira had been stopped because she drove near that building after work. That evening they took a walk around their street. The sky was turning dark blue, and the air felt cool. Families stayed indoors. Only a few porch lights flickered across the neighborhood. As they reached the corner of the street, Mira saw a patrol car parked at a distance. Its lights were off, but two figures sat inside. They were watching the road. She felt a shiver. "They are watching more closely now," she whispered. Amir took her hand lightly. "We will not let fear control us, but we must be smart." They continued their walk, acting normal, but both stayed alert. When they returned home, Myra closed the blinds and checked each window. Amir locked the doors twice. That night, Mira woke suddenly around 2. She was not sure what disturbed her, but she felt something was wrong. She walked quietly to the living room and peeked through the curtain. A patrol car was passing by their house at a slow pace. It did not stop, but its movement felt intentional. Myra watched until it turned the corner and disappeared. She sat on the couch, breathing slowly. The silence of the house felt louder than usual. She did not want to wake Amir, who finally slept after hours of research. She sat there alone, thinking, "Why were they watching her? Why did they believe she knew something? Why did they search her car so carefully?" Suddenly, she remembered something from the bakery. The day she first passed the storage building, she had seen a man carrying a box inside. She thought he worked for the town, but now she was not sure. She never saw him again. A thought struck her. What if the patrol believed she saw something without realizing it? She stood and returned to the bedroom. Amir opened his eyes when he heard her steps. "Everything all right?" he asked. Myra sat beside him. "I think the patrol believes I know something," she whispered. "Something about that old storage building." Amir sat up slowly. "Then we need to find out what is inside before they come back with more questions." Mira nodded. She felt fear, but she also felt a new strength building inside her. The calm surface of Ridgeview was cracking, and the truth was waiting behind one old building. The next morning began with a strange quiet in the air. The sky was pale gray, and the wind barely moved the leaves. Myra sat by the window holding a warm cup of tea, but she hardly tasted it. Her mind stayed focused on the storage building. All night she had replayed the moment she saw a man carrying a box inside. A simple moment she never thought twice about, but now it felt important. It felt like the missing piece in a puzzle she did not even know she was solving. Amir walked into the room with his notebook in hand. His expression was calm, but Mira could see concern in his eyes. "If the patrol is watching certain areas and circling around that building, then something is hidden there," he said. "Something they do not want the public to know." Myra nodded. "I think we should look at the building from a distance," she said. "Not close enough to be noticed, just long enough to understand what is happening." Amir hesitated for a moment. "We need to be careful. They already see you as someone to watch." Mira placed a hand on his. "We will be careful. We will not go inside. We will just observe." Amir agreed. They both understood the risk, but doing nothing felt worse. They needed answers before the patrol took their next step. Around noon they left the house in Amir's car. They chose his car because Myra's car might be flagged by the patrol. They drove slowly through the main road, blending in with regular weekend traffic. When they approached the area near the storage building, Amir turned onto a side street lined with tall trees. The branches created a natural cover, making it easier to watch without being seen. From the car window, they could see part of the old building. It was large, made of faded brick, and surrounded by a short metal fence. Nothing looked unusual from a distance. No sign of activity. No open doors. No workers. It appeared abandoned, but Mira's eyes stayed sharp. "Look," she said softly. "The ground near the side door looks clean. Someone must be using that entrance often." Amir leaned forward. He noticed it too. The dirt around the side door looked swept as if someone cleared it daily. They waited silently for several minutes. A soft hum of insects filled the air, but nothing else moved. Just when Myra began to think they might be wrong, a small van turned into the narrow street beside the building. The van was plain white with no logo. Its windows were tinted. It stopped near the side door, and a man stepped out quickly. He wore a simple gray shirt and cap, not a patrol uniform, but he moved with purpose. He walked to the door and tapped a code into a keypad. A soft click followed. He entered the building, the door closed behind him. Mira felt her heart tighten. "There is activity inside," she whispered. "This building is not empty at all." Amir nodded slowly. "Whatever is inside must be important if they keep it so hidden." They waited another minute. When nothing else happened, Amir drove away carefully, making sure their car did not draw attention. Back home, the couple sat together in the living room, thinking quietly. The silence between them was heavy with questions neither could answer yet. Later that evening, Mira went to the backyard to water her plants. She always found peace among her small garden. The gentle rustle of leaves usually relaxed her, but today her mind stayed tense. As she sprinkled water over the soil, she heard footsteps at the fence. That it was Hannah, her neighbor. She held her small puppy in her arms. Her expression looked worried. "Mira, I need to tell you something," Hannah whispered. Myra wiped her hands and stepped closer. "What happened?" Hannah looked around as if afraid someone might hear. "The patrol came to my house this morning. They asked if I knew anything about you. They asked if you talk to people at night. They even asked if you take different routes home." Myra felt a chill crawl up her spine. "What did you say?" "Told them the truth," Hannah replied. "That you are kind, that you work at the bakery, that you mind your own business." But they did not look satisfied. They asked many questions. "Too many." Mira thanked Hannah quietly, and the neighbor left quickly, holding her puppy close. The moment she disappeared behind her fence, Mira rushed inside the house. Amir looked up when he saw her expression. "What happened?" Mira explained everything Hannah said. Amir's face became serious. "They are trying to gather information about you. They think you know something." Myra sat down, breathing slowly. "I never did anything wrong. Why would they focus on me?" Amir placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe they believe you saw something near that building. Maybe the patrol is guarding whatever is inside, and anyone who passes close becomes a threat." The thought made Myra uneasy. She remembered how the patrolmen watched her so closely, how they searched her trunk, how they asked strange questions. As evening turned into night, they sat together trying to understand the next step. They did not want to confront the patrol. They did not want trouble. They only wanted to know the truth so they could protect themselves. Around 9, Amir closed his laptop. "We need more information," he said. "Watching from a distance is not enough. We need to learn what is in that building." But Myra bit her lip. "How will we do that without being caught?" "We will not go inside," he replied quickly. "But we can watch again. Not in daylight. At night. If vehicles go in or out during late hours, we can see it." Mira agreed. The plan was risky, but it was the only way to gather clues. At midnight, they left the house on foot. They did not use their car because they did not want to be tracked. They took a long route, walking through empty streets and quiet corners. Ridgeview looked peaceful at night, but tonight that peaceful face felt like a mask hiding something deeper. When they reached the cluster of trees near the storage building, they stopped behind the thickest trunk. The building stood in silence, its shape dark against the night sky. No lights showed through the windows. Myra watched carefully. Every breath felt slow and heavy. For several minutes nothing moved. Then suddenly, the same white van appeared from the far corner of the street. It drove up to the building again. The side door opened before the van even stopped, as if someone inside was waiting for it. 2 men came out of the building. They spoke quietly to the driver. Then they began unloading boxes. The boxes looked similar to the one Myra had seen weeks ago. None of the men wore uniforms. None acted like regular workers. Mira whispered softly. "They are storing something." Amir nodded. "Something they want hidden." The men finished quickly and disappeared back inside the building. The door locked again with a quiet click. The van left without lights for several seconds before turning them on down the road. Myra and Amir stayed hidden until the area became silent again. Then they began walking home with careful steps. When they reached home, Mira locked the door and leaned against it. Her breath trembled slightly. "This is bigger than we thought," she whispered. Amir nodded with a serious expression. "Now we know one thing. Whatever the patrol is involved in, it is connected to that building, and now they are watching you more than ever." Mira looked at him with steady eyes. "Then we need to be ready for whatever happens next." The truth was close, and the shadows of Ridgeview were growing deeper. The next morning arrived with a soft calm that felt almost strange after everything that had happened. Armand stood on the back porch, watching the sky turn light orange under the rising sun. He held a warm cup of tea and tried to steady his thoughts. So much had happened in such a short time, yet it felt as if days had passed inside a single night. Inside the house, Mira prepared breakfast while humming lightly. She moved with slow steps, still tired but stronger than before. Every now and then she glanced at the living room window, checking the quiet street outside. The danger was not fully gone, but she felt safer knowing the truth was out and people were finally listening. Their friend, Samir, arrived early with a small notebook in his hand. He had spent the whole night writing down everything they discovered. His notes had details from the fake HOA letter to the fake badge and the planned ambush. He had also collected statements from a few neighbors who came forward after hearing about the group. Samir stepped in and closed the door gently. He looked at Mira with a proud smile. She had gone through a frightening moment, yet she stayed calm and smart. She handled the situation in a way that helped stop a bigger problem. Armin came inside when he heard the door. He welcomed Samir, and they both sat at the dining table. Myra placed breakfast in front of them and joined them with a warm but tired smile. Samir opened his notebook and began explaining. The town security office had already reviewed their report. The officer in charge had confirmed that the group truly had no official link to any local service. They were pretending to act like a community authority, using uniforms and badges that looked real enough to fool people. The officer also shared something they found surprising. That same group had been seen in 2 other neighborhoods in the past month. They did not harm anyone, but they tried to find people, scare them into following fake rules, and collect personal details from innocent families. Armin felt uneasy hearing this. He wanted to believe their situation was rare, a misunderstanding that happened only to them. But the truth was much bigger. The group had been slowly trying to control small parts of the town. By pretending to be helpful, Samir explained that an official team had now taken charge of the case. The group members were being questioned and their equipment was being checked. Officers were looking for anyone else connected to them. Myra listened quietly, her hands wrapped around her warm cup. She felt relieved but also sad that so many families had been fooled. She wished she could meet those families and tell them it was not their fault. Anyone could be misled when something looked official and sounded confident. After breakfast, they all stepped outside. A few neighbors walked over as soon as they saw Mira. They asked how she was feeling and thanked her for speaking up. One neighbor, an elderly lady named Ronnie, said she had always felt something strange about the group, but never found the courage to question them. Myra smiled kindly at her. She assured her that staying silent did not mean weakness. Sometimes things look so official that people feel afraid to ask questions. The important thing was that the truth finally came forward. By afternoon, the security office invited Mira and Armin to give an official statement. They agreed, wanting to help as much as possible. When they arrived, the officer welcomed them and guided them through the process. The officer treated them with respect and made sure Myra felt safe the entire time. They sat in a calm room with soft lights and simple chairs. The officer asked Myra to describe everything from the moment she left home that evening. She spoke slowly, giving each detail clearly. She explained the fake stop, the warning she heard from inside the car, and how she stayed calm even though the situation felt frightening. Armin added details from the moment he arrived at the scene. Samir had already provided video clips from his home camera, which helped confirm important points. The officer thanked them for their help and informed them that the town council also wanted to meet them later in the week. They were planning to set new rules for neighborhood checks and wanted to use this case as a reminder for everyone to verify any authority before following instructions. When they returned home, the street was lively. Children played near the sidewalks. Neighbors greeted them with friendly waves. The tension from the previous night had faded. People were alert but calmer. That evening, Armin and Mira sat on the porch swing. A cool breeze passed through the trees. The sky slowly turned darker, but the streetlights shone bright and steady. Armin looked at Mira with gratitude in his eyes. He told her how proud he was of her strength. Myra looked back at him with the same warmth. She said she felt brave because she knew he would always stand with her, and she knew Samir was always a call away. They talked about starting a small community group themselves, not to act like authority but to help neighbors stay informed. They planned to host a simple meeting once a month where people could discuss local matters, share concerns, and understand how real services worked. Their idea was simple but powerful. It focused on awareness and unity. As they talked, 2 young neighbors approached and asked if they could join the group when it started. Armin said yes with a smile. Mira invited them to share ideas for the first meeting. The neighbors left with excitement, promising to bring more friends. Later that night, Mira stood by the window and looked outside. She did not feel fear anymore. She felt strong. She felt valued. She felt like she had done something meaningful, not just for herself but for many people around her. Armin joined her and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Together they watched the peaceful street. The night was calm. The town was safe. The truth had been uncovered, and although the journey had been long and stressful, it led to a stronger, wiser community. Myra closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. She knew life would continue as usual, but she also knew she would never ignore her instincts again. She had faced a frightening situation and handled it with courage. She had spoken up when it mattered, and because of her actions, many others were now safe. The story of the fake HOA group would be remembered in their town for a long time. People would learn from it and become more aware, and Mira would always be seen as the one who helped bring the truth to light in the quiet street filled with warm lights. Armin and Mira stood together, ready for a new and peaceful chapter in their lives.